off with our slip knot. To create a slip knot, you simply want to wrap your yarn around 2 fingers to create a loop. Then you want to take the yarn that is connected to the yarn ball and you want to pull it through that loop. Then you want to pull once again, and this creates your slip knot. Next, we're going to chain 35. You can chain any amount you want, but keep in mind that this amount has to satisfy the circumference of your head. To chain, I'm simply yarning over and pulling through the loop on my hook. After you've completed your initial foundation chain, regardless of how many you've chained, you just want to add 5 chains. Afterwards, we are going to join both ends of our foundation chain. To do so, you're going to follow your chain until you reach the beginning, being sure to allow no twist in your chain. Then you are going to find the first chain that you completed, and then you're just going to insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through both loops on your hook. We're going to move on to round 1, where we're going to start off by chaining 1. Afterwards, you are going to slip stitch into the second chain from the hook and every chain around. So I'm going to find that second chain from the hook, then I'm going to insert my hook, pull through, and then pull through once again on the loop on my hook. Then I'm going to find my next chain, and once again I'm going to insert my hook, pull through, and pull through the loop on my hook. And I'm going to do this until I reach the beginning of round 1. After slip stitching in every single chain around, your work should look a little something like this. Next, we're going to move on to round 2, where we are going to slip stitch into the top loop of the first slip stitch of the previous round. So what does this look like? You are going to first locate the top loops because these are critical in our work. After you've located all your top loops, we can positively say that this is what you are going to be working your stitches into. So I'm going to find the first slip stitch that I created in round 1, and I'm going to simply slip stitch into that slip stitch. Afterwards, I'm going to mark this stitch with a stitch marker. Now when I say stitch marker, you could either use a piece of yarn. I like to use a safety pin because they are secure. This represents the first stitch of round 2. You're going to continue to slip stitch in the top loop of every stitch around until you reach the stitch marked with the stitch marker. When you've completed round 2, your work should look a lot like mine. And we're going to move on to round 3, where you are simply going to repeat round 2. Keep in mind that the pattern is in the description box, so if you feel as if this video is going a little quick, you can always refer to that. For round 4, we are going to just repeat what we did in rounds 2 and rounds 3. After we've completed round 4, we're going to move on to round 5, which is a little different. We're going to start off by slip stitching into the top loop of the first slip stitch of round 4. Afterwards, we're going to remove our stitch marker for now because we do not need it, and then we're going to proceed to chain 3. This chain 3 represents the first treble crochet of the round. We are going to continue to treble crochet into the top loop of the next slip stitch and every slip stitch around until we reach the first treble crochet. So how do we do this? You want to wrap your yarn around your hook twice. Then we're going to locate the top loop, and then we're just going to insert our hook into that top loop. Then we are going to pull through, and you should have 4 loops on your hook. Then, afterwards, you are just going to yarn over once again, and you're going to pull through 2 loops on your hook. You should have 3 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over once again, pull through another 2 loops, and then once again you're going to yarn over and pull through another 2 loops. And that completes your first treble crochet. We are going to continue on to treble crochet in the top loop of every single slip stitch from the previous round until we reach that chain 3, also known as our first treble crochet of round 5. After completing round 5, you'll notice that your piece has increased dramatically, which is not a bad thing. We're going to move on to round 6, where we are going to start off by slip stitching into the 3rd chain of the chain 3 from the beginning of the round. Now I know that sounds crazy, but just watch. We're going to find the 3rd chain of the chain 3 that we initially started off with. Then we're going to insert our hook into that top loop, pull through, and then pull through the loop on our hook. Afterwards, we're going to mark this stitch with a stitch marker because this represents the first slip stitch of round 6. After marking this stitch, we are going to continue to slip stitch in the top loop of every stitch around until we reach the stitch marked with the stitch marker. So once again, just locate the top loops. They're generally the ones that are sticking up, or you can refer to them as the back loop, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Point is, you are only slip stitching into one loop. Moving on to round 7, where we are going to start off by slip stitching into the top loop of the first slip stitch of the previous round. Afterwards, we are going to proceed to mark this stitch with a stitch marker. So we're going to remove our stitch marker from round 6, and we're going to move it on to round 7. Afterwards, we are going to continue to slip stitch in the top loop of every stitch around until we reach the stitch marked with the stitch marker. So once again, this is repeating round 2. Afterwards, we are going to proceed to round 8, where we are simply going to repeat round 7. After completing round 8, we are going to repeat rounds 2 to 8 2 more times. The pattern is in the description box if you need something to reference. I'm going to move on to finishing. And as you can see, our piece has developed. It's fully grown, gone through puberty and everything. And we're going to start off by removing our stitch marker because we don't need it anymore. Afterwards, you are going to pull through a loop that is about 30 to 40 inches. And this is what we're going to use to weave in and kind of make our hat, essentially. Afterwards, you just want to cut and fasten. On to actually making the hat. We're going to start off by turning our piece inside out. Afterwards, we are going to attach our needle to the yarn that we just cut. Then, we're going to proceed to weave the yarn through the last row of work that we completed. So first I'm going to locate my last row, I guess that's the first step. And then I'm just going to simply weave through those slip stitches. And as you can see, it's not hard, just make sure that your yarn doesn't get tangled. When you've reached the beginning of your weaving, you are simply going to pull very hard to tighten it. And after pulling, we just want to tie a few knots to secure it. Now, I don't know exactly how to say how I tie the knots, but if you watch, there's a nice visual here on how I generally do it. And after completing all that mumbo jumbo, we are simply going to cut and weave in all of our loose ends. Then you just want to turn your hat right side out. I mean, unless you want to wear it the other way. And you are finished. Yay! Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you in my next one.